China is also hosting a security conference for some 50 African defense ministers. The China-Africa Peace Security Forum is underway in the capital. For more on that, let's go right to Einar Tangen. He's a current affairs commentator and senior fellow at the Taihe Institute and the chairman of Asia Narratives. Always great to see you, Einar.
Good to see you, Elaine.
Well, what are the expectations for this security forum, and what does China hope to accomplish?
Well, coming on the end of BRICS and also a forum of China and Africa that was held just after BRICS, what it is walking the walk. Quite frankly, there are many countries, the United States included, that's always talking about threats. China's trying to talk about the solutions, and the solutions are, a global security initiative. Africa is really beset by a lot of problems. Horn of Africa, Sudan, also the Sahel region. You've seen a lot of unrest, changes in governments, etc. But these are not things that can one country can impose on another. It's not a solution that China can do. And this is a very different model from what's been happening in the past with the US and Europe. They've always said, well, we'll tell you what to do and you just follow along. At this point, China is trying to get everybody to the peace table so that they can talk this out as opposed to fight it out.
You mentioned this political instability. We have to mention the coups in Niger and most recently Gabon, a total of 8 on the African continent since 2020. When you have gatherings like this with all of these defense ministers, can China be seen as a party to broker some sort of peaceful solution or offer peaceful options?
Well, quite frankly, that's all that China can do. I mean, much like bringing Saudi Arabia and Iran together, it is, China's policy to bring the parties to the table so that they can figure out what the solutions will be. I mean, we've seen since the end of World War II, this idea that you can impose peace or impose your own ideas on other countries. The fact is, harmony is not going to be achieved by everybody being uniform, just following the same path. Harmony will be achieved by accepting each other's differences, understanding where they come from, and then trying to work out common ground.
China provides the largest number of troops to UN peacekeeping missions than any other permanent Security Council member, with many concentrated on the African continent, particularly in the country of Mali. How does that play into how China views the continent, and is that something that could be up for discussion as well?
Well, currently 80% of the UN peacekeeper troops that China puts forward are in Africa. There have been, in addition to the peacekeepers, there's been 44 anti-piracy task force groups that have been there and to protect trade since 2008. So China is walking the walk. They're talking about security in the terms of countries have to develop their own plan, their own path forward, and that has to be respected. So, as I said, China can supply peacekeepers, but it cannot create the peace. That is something that has to come from within these countries. We've seen this time and time again. You just cannot impose your values or your idea of peace on people who aren't willing to accept them.
And Einar, you touched on the recent BRICS summit in South Africa. President Xi also co-chairing the China-Africa Leaders Dialogue. Talk to us about current China-Africa ties. I mean, we saw President Xi travel and make that in-person diplomatic appearance there.
Well, it's very important. In BRICS, Ethiopia was added to BRICS Plus. This is the second most populous country in Africa. Some people were surprised, but China was very keen on making sure that this club or grouping of middle powers did not ignore the fact that Africa has a tremendous amount of potential and also needs to be at the table. And that's quite different from other groupings that are out there. G7 especially comes to mind, where there's just no representation whatsoever by African nations. So at this point, other than South Africa, but sorry, not South Africa. So the real elephant in the room, though, Elaine, is economics. It's not by coincidence that 2020 has been the year when you've seen an uptick in problems. Quite frankly, with the pandemic, with the debt levels, with the economic depression, the interest rate rises being pushed by the United States and also other countries, this has hit Africa very hard. And when you have countries that are developing, they do not have the kind of savings that are out there. So it automatically equals a recipe for unrest. And that is something that has to be addressed, not just at security forums, but also at economic forums like FOCAC.
All right, Einar Tangen, always great to get your take. Thank you so much for joining us from Beijing.
Thank you.